Radio Free Mormon here, broadcasting behind enemy lines. Episode 441, no podcast for you. Good evening, everybody. There's breaking news coming out of Salt Lake City today. A new apostle has been just chosen to fill the rank left by President Russell M. Nelson when he passed away late last year. The new apostle is being announced as, let me see here, it is Clark. Yes, it is Clark G. Gilbert. He's 55 years old. He is the former commissioner of education for the LDS Church, and he is quite possibly the whitest white man in the history of Western civilization. Additional news coming in from 2 days ago, President Dallin H. gave his first public address as the official president of the LDS Church. That address was given at BYU Provo. It has raised some concerns and some comments. And he told the audience that God has told him what it is that he needs to do as the prophet. And apparently part of what he needs to do is tell you not to listen to podcasts like this. This is very much on the top of God's list. And since this affects people who podcast in the post-Mormon space, I thought I would bring along some fellow podcasters and we could look at some clips and discuss them. First off, we've got, let's see here, excuse me for a second. We've got Randall Bell. Welcome to the studio, Randall Bell, Dr. Randall Bell.
RFM, nice to see you.
It's so good to see you, believe me. Now we've also got coming into the room, Rebecca Biblioteca. Hello, it's the ex-Mormon of the year.
It is. There's my award right there, right?
Bravo, bravo. And by the way, you owe me money, Rebecca, because you were foolish enough to bet with me that the LDS Church was going to pick somebody who was not the whitest white man in the history of Western civilization.
Yeah, I was thinking, I hoped, but you're right. They did, and I do owe you and Bill each $50. I will bring it to Thrive. For a minute, I thought you were going to say Clark W. Griswold. Now, that would have been fun.
That would have been a great pick. Absolutely.
It would have been a great pick. Are you kidding?
Also on the panel is John Dallin. John Dallin, how are you doing?
I've missed you, RFM, and Rebecca, and Randy. I've missed you all.
John Dallin has a little podcast. It's an up-and-comer. It's called Mormon Stories. And also, finally, we've got, coming in from across the pond, your friend and mine, Nemo, the Mormon. How are you doing, Nemo?
I'm tired, but I'm here and ready to talk about it.
Why are you tired? It's only 6:30 in Mountain Time.
Well, if only Mountain Time was the same time for all of us. Here,
It's
where time starts
in the morning.
It's 1:30 in the morning, indeed.
This is amazing, and you are such a trooper. Thank you so much for showing up for this show. And thank you, everybody, because I just had this idea yesterday. This seemed to be quite topical, having been this big talk where President Oak speaks for the first time publicly 2 days ago. He mentions me. He mentions you, Nemo. Rebecca, you got special mention. John, you were in there. And Randall, I think he talked about you too. All about these post-Mormon podcasts that God does not want Mormons listening to. Woo. Okay. So everybody, before we start, I've got 11 clips that I picked that cover a bunch of different things. I want to play one and then get your thoughts about it. Then we go to the next one and so on until we get through with all 11. But before we begin, does anybody have any comments you want to make before we get started? Kind of like what I've been doing.
I do have something quick to say, which is that when it rains, it pours in Mormonism, because you had the church's response to Bo Euler coming out, and then the problems that created for their statements, sworn testimonies that they gave. Then you have Dallin H. giving this address that we're talking about, and now you've got a new apostle announced. So if you're trying to make any sort of informed content on any of those things, you've got a busy old week ahead of you. So pray for us all in the comments. Thank you very much. We're going to be busy.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'll just say that I had a conversation with Sandra Tanner not long ago where I said, it looks like Dallin Oaks is going to be our next president. That's just going to be a disaster. And she just laughed and said, you couldn't be more wrong. He's going to give us so much content and make the church look so bad. It's going to keep everyone running for a long time. So I got to just pipe in with that one.
John, any comments from you?
I just think it was a real honor in his very first talk to the worldwide church membership that he mentions podcasts. It really means we're living rent free in his head, that we're having a really big impact. And I think he should be thanking us for helping provide members with information, informed consent, community, hope. So you're welcome, Elder Oaks.
Well, those are two of the things that Elder Oaks likes least: informed and consent. Anything from you, Rebecca?
Just that it was not at all what I expected, but I do see now that it sort of sets the tone for his tenure and going forward. And I also want to give a plug to a Substack that John wrote, where he really did outline what this talk meant in terms of post-Mormonism and podcasting. I thought it was excellent. And if you guys can find that online, read it. He did an excellent job of really explaining what this really means in a bigger framework.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Well, horrible, horrible confession. Okay, I'll make it. I saw that. I did think it was good. And that was the inspiration for putting this together and me asking you specifically, John, to be on the show.
Thank you, RFM.
All right. Well, let's get to it, shall we? And I'm going to put this slide up here on the stage. I have given each of them a number, 1 through 11, and a little title. Mantle of the Prophet. This is where he talks about the mantle falling upon him some months, I think he says, after President Nelson died. For some reason, it was a slow-moving mantle. And these are the timestamps I have up there. You don't have to worry about them being so far into it because, of course, there was all this singing and praying and then some more singing before President Oaks started speaking. But that's the timestamp if you want to check it out. This is the one from the BYU devotional with President Dallin H Oaks from 2 days ago. And here is the first clip.
Upon President Nelson's death, I experienced another meaning of the mantle. To observers, it symbolizes a transfer of priesthood authority. To the person who receives that authority, it is very different and very real. Within a few months after learning of our president's death, I felt the heaviness of responsibility settle upon me, along with important impressions of what I was required to do now.
Okay, so that, excuse me, let me take this down. And let's, you see, that was the part within a few months. I mean, it's been a few months since President Nelson died. And he's saying within a few months of his death, all of a sudden, then he realized what it was that he needs to do. So any comments about that? Let's start with Dr. John Dallin.
I mean, I believe I think we've probably all said at one time or another, the last job we would want would be to be a Mormon prophet or apostle. And I think he probably does feel a lot of pressure. And honestly, I can't think of a worse time to be. I mean, okay, I can think of a few worse times to be prophet in the history of the church, but in many ways, it's not a great time. So I bet he is feeling emotional and overwhelmed and worried that he might cause a lot of harm, honestly.
Okay. Rebecca.
Yeah, I think he's overwhelmed also because he is very elderly. He really looks to me like he's very infirm. I mean, even just a few years ago, he was pretty vibrant. You know, he was right up there with President Nelson. And if you think back to when President Nelson was called, we're all like, oh, okay, he's going to be here for a while. Look at him. But with President Oaks, I do feel that health issues may get in the way of his tenure. And I think that's probably why he is emotional. You know, it's an interesting time for him to become the prophet. And at first I thought he was going to say, like he said before, I was kind of surprised that it was me, you know, like this idea that it's not already chosen and we can do the algorithm and figure out who's going to be the prophet.
You
for the
like
next 40
me. You
years.
really like me.
Yeah, exactly. You like me. You really like me. But yeah, my takeaway at first is he really does look very frail, you know, and I kind of, yeah, that was my thought.
Dr. Randy Bell. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, I agree with both John and Rebecca. I had the opportunity to meet President Oaks once in the administration building right outside of his office. I was in there for something else. And at that time I met him, he seethed arrogance, quite honestly. And I was an active member of the church, but I just remember that he seemed very self-consumed, very self-important. And I did see a switch here with his demeanor, and that's probably a good thing.
When was that?
Well, it would have been over 10 years ago, because I left the church over 10 years ago. It was a while ago.
Okay, thank you. Nemo?
Hey, Oaks and I have personally interacted. There's a story there we don't need to get into, but I'm not his biggest fan. What I will say is I think it's easier for them, particularly under someone like Nelson, who is particularly fond of the sound of his own voice and likes all the attention on him, for everyone to push all the attention on him, everyone in the Quorum of the 12 to push all the attention on him. They get to run around doing their thing. They get to support, prop up Nelson, but Nelson ultimately is this figurehead, and he takes to that very naturally. It doesn't seem to me that Oaks actually takes to it naturally, informed by that same sort of narcissistic tendency that we particularly saw in Nelson. And so I think perhaps what we're seeing here is a realization from him that, oh, this all stops with me now. Everything that goes wrong, everything that comes over the desk that isn't nice, that's all on me now. And as he gets older, yeah, that's less fun.
Yes, a theater analogy comes to mind. It's sort of like he's been the stage manager for a long time, but now he has to take center stage.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's go to the next clip. Number 2, President Oaks wants to help with our doubts. Now, first thing, doubts are number 1 on his mind. Not his doubts, but the doubts that the members are having in him and in the church that he's the prophet of. Otherwise, I doubt that he would be bringing it up in his first public address. Here's what he has to say.
I feel to emphasize the warning President Russell M. Nelson issued us that in coming days, it will not be possible to survive spiritually without the guiding, comforting, and constant influences of the Holy Ghost. One of the many reasons you will need the constant influence of the Holy Ghost is that you live in a season where the adversary has become so effective at disguising truth that if you don't have the Holy Ghost, you will be deceived. Many obstacles lie ahead. The distractions will be many. Even active members may sometimes have concerns about some historical, doctrinal, or social issues connected with the church. I want to help all our members overcome present or future doubts.
So there is President Oaks, in as big a way as I could remember, acknowledging all the doubts that are riddling the church, even among the active membership. What do you think of that, Rebecca?
Yep, I think his theme is going to be doubt, right? And doubt your doubt. They're kind of trotting that out again. But I just feel like the Streisand effect is only just beginning. Active members, as he said, what historical issues, what social issues, what might those be? And then you start thinking about it or looking into it. But as he says, override all of that. Your intellect, your thinking process, you just have to pray it away, rely on the Holy Ghost, and all of this misinformation isn't, podcasters like us or other people that are shining a spotlight on truth claims and social issues and all of that. It's the adversary. And that's very comforting for faithful members to hear, I think. It's the adversary because they've been taught how to combat that. The other kinds of things that are going on, people shining a spotlight on issues, not so much. That's a little more difficult. So doubt is the theme going forward. I believe, and he said it right there, his first prophetic address in his tenure.
Yes, and he'll have more to say about it. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Yeah, can I just jump in
Go ahead.
out of order because I want to highlight something Kid Freshy said in the comments. He said, "You will be deceived." Weird, because I've never bought a fake forged document about a salamander, which is a fair point. Oaks is an interesting man to talk to us about deception, given his role in all that. That's a fair point, Kid Freshy. Thank you.
Yes, it is. And it's also going to, the background on this is that President Oaks has a whole history of hiding stuff. Okay. from the members of the church and being fine with it and actually promoting it publicly. It was 40 years ago. He was addressing CES and he said, look, the church has no responsibility, has no duty to tell the other side of the story. Okay. He said that publicly. I've played the audio. We've read the transcript before. That's who this fellow is. Okay. So it's no surprise that he's going to be out there and trying to continue to hide things. He can't hide us, but he can try and make it so members don't listen to us so that they don't hear the other side of the story and be able to make an informed decision. Randall Bell, what do you think?
When I listened to this yesterday, it struck me that I was kind of expecting a gung-ho out of the gate, optimistic theme. And he, the mantle's heavy, we've all heard that a million times, and doubts. Well, obviously that's on everyone's mind because so many people are leaving the church. So that was my first impression. And then when he said disguising truth, those two words, I thought that's rich. I mean, that's really rich. I didn't leave the church personally because of its truth. I left the church because they came out with the gospel topic essays, which effectively admitted that every single anti-Mormon lie was actually the truth. The Baptist preacher down the street was telling the truth. My church had not been telling the truth. So I got to just tell you, Elder Oaks or President Oaks, that's rich.
You're right. We're going to go to you next, John. But it used to be that what we were told, I'm talking 70s, 80s, was that you don't read the anti-Mormon literature because it's full of lies, right?
Yeah.
That's the same playbook. He's saying don't listen to, obviously he's talking about post-Mormon podcasts. Don't listen to post-Mormon podcasts or even neutral podcasts because they're full of misinformation without pointing out anything specifically. It's the same old scare tactic. It just struck me when you were talking. It's the same thing today as 50 years ago.
And Oaks knows personally, certainly from things I've sent him and dealt with him, that we have the receipts. He knows that people like me, people like all of us here on this panel, we have the evidence and we're willing to put it out in public.
That's why he doesn't want people to listen to us.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. John Dallin, what do you think?
I'll just say that as someone who's been watching the space for 20 years, 21 years, I don't know that there's a single human alive more responsible for people losing their faith than Dallin H. Oaks. And I don't mean that to be hyperbolic or sensationalistic. His rhetoric over the years, his involvement in Prop 8, if you add that to his basic architecture of the church's LGBTQ strategy for 50 years, and then you add to that the November 15 policy, which clearly he orchestrated with the help of Russell M. Nelson while Elder Monson was out of it. And then the the killing or the undoing of the November 2015 policy, less than 4 years later. And then you add to that all the LGBTQ suicides and people who have left because of the church's LGBTQ policies. I think tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people have left because of Dallin H. Oaks. And so it's interesting that I think he's caused way more people to leave than any of us altogether. Add up all the podcasters in the world who are Mormon or ex-Mormon podcasters.
Yeah.
Dallin H. Oaks has caused more to leave. So it's interesting that he's pointing at us. I think 3 fingers or maybe 4 are pointing back at him.
Yes, I might have been expecting a more pastoral approach in a first sermon. But no, he's continuing along the same vein. By the way, if you recall, that last clip that we played ended with a cliffhanger because he says he is going to help us with any and all doubts that we might have because he has got the one answer solution, the one size fits all solution. And that solution looks a lot like your friend and mine, Jesus. Here's his answer.
Whatever those doubts, The way to overcome them is to get closer to our Savior, Jesus Christ. Again and again, he has taught us that he is the way.
All right. Randall Bell, you are a Christian, and perhaps the only Christian among us. I don't know, but I know that you are a devout believer in Jesus. And I'm wondering if that has a special meaning to you, what President Oaks just said.
Yeah, I got to just say that, and I'll probably end up saying it again because his presentation, his talk was so counter to mainstream Christianity, which embraces debate. The Veritas Forum, Biola University, they actively invite atheists, agnostics, skeptics to have polite debates annually, or more than that, actually, between the two groups. You know, the Bible actually teaches test all things. That means listen to both sides. He seems to be absolutely opposed to that idea. So I think what he's saying and trying to blame Jesus for it, to, you know, doubt your doubts on this whole theme, is exactly opposite of what Jesus actually taught.
Well, to make a point, you've drawn nearer to Jesus after leaving the LDS Church. I think you'd agree to that, yes?
100%.
Has drawing nearer to Jesus helped you resolve the doubts you have about Mormonism?
Yeah, it really has. I frankly, I don't think about Mormonism much anymore. I do. I mean, this is
Hey, Randy, let me jump in here a second, okay? Yeah. I mean, in favor of the church. You now understand that all the problems you saw with the church were wrong, and that the church doesn't have those problems anymore. Is that right?
I'm not following you. The Mormon Church has a lot of problems.
What I'm saying is that Elder Oak says that if you move toward Jesus, your doubts will be in the church will be resolved. You have moved toward Jesus. I'm asking if your doubts in the church have been resolved.
Well, it's been the opposite, frankly. I think now that I'm tracking you. Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, John asked me the other day what church I go to, and I said, well, when I'm at church, I think about the beach, and when I go to the beach, I think about God. So I just skip it all and just go to the beach. I spent a couple years as a solid agnostic when I left the Mormon Church. I didn't know which way was up. My whole worldview exploded. And I explored a number of worldviews and still do, frankly. I'm still intrigued by different worldviews, and I gain a lot from different perspectives. But as I got into, listening to my Christian friends who before I had just debated and never really actually listened to them, I think that debate is great. We test all things. We want both sides of the story. Again, 100% opposed to what Dallin Oaks is teaching here.
Yeah, and I went through that little Socratic exercise with you in order to point out the fact that I think most people get is that when Dallin Oaks is talking about Jesus, he doesn't mean Jesus.
No.
He doesn't mean Jesus separate and apart from the LDS Church. He means the LDS Church, and he means he himself. He means as you move closer to me, your doubts will be resolved, young Padawan.
Yeah, and I think the New Testament, which I thought I knew as a Mormon, has a whole different meaning through a non-Mormon lens, and I'm struck with just how opposite what the New Testament actually teaches, as opposed to what I was taught about it in Mormonism.
Thank you, Nemo.
Yes, sir. I think I draw this back into he's sort of deferring off to Jesus when he claims to speak for Jesus. So really, the book ultimately then stops with him. And I think about the fact that I sent him my doubts. I sent him my concerns about the honesty of church leaders. I sent him a big, long document. He promised to investigate it. And he came back with a study from Fair Mormon that said he didn't lie in one instance. So I find it almost personally troublesome that he's standing there promising that he wants to help people overcome their doubts when he had an opportunity to help me personally with my doubts, promised to help me with those doubts, and then didn't. There was no Jesus there from him. He didn't help
and there was no denial. Tellingly,
there was no denial of any wrongdoing by him personally.
Yeah. He didn't say,
wasn't
no,
able
I
to
didn't
speak
lie.
to his own
Instead, he
honesty.
gives you a paper from FAIR
Yeah.
that says he didn't lie and says, here, read this.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this. Is I don't believe him when he says he wants to help people resolve those doubts. I believe that he wants those doubts to go away so that the people stop leaving the church, so that the church can stabilize the way he wants it to be.
Yeah. John Dallin.
I'll just say that one of the things I feel like was good about Russell M. Nelson's administration was the turn away from Joseph Smith and towards Jesus Christ. I think we all know the Mormon Church being worth $500 billion is not going anywhere. If the Shakers are still around and they're not allowed to have sex at all or children, the Mormon Church is going to be around for millennia, probably.
Only the unrighteous Shakers are still with us.
That's right. Or converts, but or really old ones. But so I think it's good they're focusing on Christ and less on Joseph Smith. And so I'm glad he's continuing that part of the mantle. I guess I hope Dallin H. Oakes's behaviors and words and rhetoric as a prophet mirror the words and the teachings of Jesus, instead of just urging the members to follow Jesus. I hope he follows Jesus.
Well, as long as Jesus isn't listening to these podcasts, then I think you're on the straight and narrow. All right. Now that he has determined this is the structure of the talk, it's all about doubts. They're all out there. And he's also going to talk about in one clip about how they know about all these people who are leaving the church, right? But now that he's got it set out, the one solution is Jesus. Well, I got 4 ways that you can follow Jesus better so that you will resolve those doubts. And here's how he introduces the 4 ways.
I share 4 impressions that will draw us closer to our Savior. First, strengthen our faith in him. Second, increase our humility. Third, seek help from others. And fourth, be patient.
I don't know if there's that much there to talk about. This first one, though, the one about have faith, all he does is spend less than a minute on that. It's a throwaway. It talks about the first article of faith in God. We believe in God the Father and in His Son Jesus Christ and the Holy Ghost. And he says we need to have more faith in them. Period. Jump over to number 2.
I think it's worth mentioning he called them impressions, and he started this talk, as we heard, talking about the impressions that he has felt under his prophetic mantle. So again, you should take these as directions he was given from the Lord. So this is what Jesus wants him to tell you about ways you can improve and overcome your doubts. This is direct from the source through Oakes to you.
Very good. Any other comments about that? Yeah.
I mean, you have to have faith in things that are true, from my understanding of Mormonism and how I was taught faith works. And I think that's the big problem he has, is faith in what? Faith in Joseph Smith, faith in the book.
Right now, he's only talking about the first article of faith.
Yeah. I'm just saying, what are we believing in as Mormons that's true but distinctive?
Yeah, and I think there's a few articles that follow that first one too. You got to believe those as well. Okay, so let me go to the next one, because now he's going to talk about how the church, and he himself personally, he actually even talks about himself, prophet leaders in the church. So I think he's referring to himself and the others. And here's what he says about his concerns.
The Lord loves all of his children and longs for their return. But we all know examples of returned missionaries who have interrupted their spiritual growth by periods of inactivity. We know of youth who have jeopardized their spiritual growth by separating themselves from church teachings, such as those who are expressing little desire to be married or to have children. And there are adult members who do not seek to be a covenant-making people, such as men who do not prepare for ordination to the Melchizedek priesthood. Those of diminishing faith and activity in the restored church are a major source of concern to your prophet leaders. We love you, young and old, men and women. So does the Lord. God is relentless in his loving pursuit of each of you. Keep the commandments and be true to the covenant so many of you have made to guide you along the covenant path. Never let your secular learning limit your horizons.
Okay, Nemo, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the hope the doctors on the panel aren't going to let their secular learning get in the way of their horizons. Sorry, John and Randall. I had a few thoughts. One thing that stuck out to me was that he quoted Patrick Kieran, who in one of his recent General Conference talks talked about the Lord being a relentless pursuit of you. So that's interesting to see it go down in that direction rather than everyone quoting Oakes quoting other members of the 12. That's, again, a departure from Nelson. Don't think Nelson was a particular fan of doing that.
Nelson only quoted God.
Yes, therefore himself. So, yeah, I think the fact that it's a source of major concern and they're admitting that should give pause for thought for some of the apologists of the church who try and say that, no, they're not worried. People aren't leaving. Actually, no, they are worried. Why would they not be concerned? Why else would they be concerned if it wasn't people leaving and people becoming inactive? And I had to scoff because Dallin H was on his thing about people having kids again, because that seems to be a big priority for him, that people be out there making babies.
Yeah, there's so much that he says, but one of the things that interests me is why is it that he is saying what he is saying? And this, I think, gets to the root of that. And they're concerned people are bailing right and left. John Dallin next. John Dallin next. Your comments, please.
Yeah, I wish, I guess two things. He talks about youth that are going inactive and separating themselves, he says. He talks about, people not getting married and having kids, and adults, men not getting the priesthood. I wish that they would take more responsibility, because I don't think people are just choosing to abandon the church. The people that I know are leaving the church because the church is either not true, has deceived them, or it's harmed people and is not acting good. So I wish against all hope that Oakes could take more responsibility for why people are leaving instead of blaming the victims. And then secondly, I wish that he would figure out a way to make Mormonism more compelling, more kind, more Christ-like, and just more relevant in people's lives, particularly young people.
It does seem like it's very much the same old playbook. He keeps doing the same thing and hoping for different results. Rebecca, now your comments.
I'm just laughing because you did not call on me the last time. So I thought maybe I was going to.
Did I not?
You did not, which is fine.
Please. Okay, take twice the time and tell us your thoughts about
it. I will not take twice the time. Anyway, what I was going to say is you would never hear this talk, even I think 3 years ago. You just would not hear this, right? The Streisand effect, it's blowing up everywhere. For people that didn't think there was a problem or had their head in the stand, when your prophet stands up and says this, you've got to know something's going on. My co-host Landon said, equates it to, you have a new CEO and you all go into the auditorium, right? And you're going to hear his vision for the future of the company and you're going to find out what's going on. You got your bagel and your coffee. And then he goes, it's not so great, but hang in there with us. And we're not going to change our product, but we're just hoping for the best, right? It was just like that. And that's what I mean by it was not at all what I expected. It was actually sort of sad to me. I mean, the church before, whether they were saying anything that was true, at least they seemed like they believed their own message. And in this case, it was just kind of desperate, I thought.
Yeah, there's no bluster here.
Yeah, there was no bluster whatsoever. It was, and for people that really aren't aware that there are problems with people leaving, and he was very specific. Return missionaries and people that don't want to get ordained and people that aren't having, he was very specific about calling out the problems. For people that aren't aware, I think they left listening to that kind of a little concerned. It was not reassuring at all. And you usually got that from an LDS perspective from other leaders when they spoke.
Very good. Dr. Bell.
Well, I think Rebecca just really beautifully articulated that it is kind of a downer talk. There is no bluster, as I mentioned before. It was no gung ho out of it. I think President Oaks is absolutely right, and there should be great concern. John said earlier that tens of thousands were leaving, and I don't disagree with John Dallin much, but I don't think it's tens of thousands. I think it's millions. The church claims north of 17 million members. There's 3 or 4 million people showing up. So that means about an 80%, millions of people. And going to the theme of this on podcasters and coming down on, the evil apostate podcasters, I've seen the numbers, and you folks collectively get hundreds of millions of views a year, and millions of people have left. Not tens of thousands. I think John was being a little modest there. So so I think he's right. I think there's an enormous amounts of doubt, and the solution, the anecdote, is so simple, and it's this thing called apologize. But the church won't do it. It's just not in their game plan to have. He's going to talk about humility. I don't know if you have that clip coming up, but there's no humility. Because people with humility apologize when they make mistakes. And the church has obviously made spectacular mistakes over and over again. They continue to make mistakes. Oaks is just giving us another round of mistakes with this very talk. They won't apologize. They just pretend it never happened. It's a passive aggressive behavior. So I think he's right. And I think they have a lot to be concerned about. Particularly with the anecdote.
You know what humility means when President Oaks says it, don't you? You need to have humility, which means you need to do what I tell you. Exactly. I'm the one you're supposed to be humble to. I speak for God.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, guys. Some randos just come into the stream. I don't know who this is.
Did somebody leave the door open?
It's Colby.
Hey, people Colby, also apologize when they're late, Randy. So I apologize for being late.
I didn't think you were late. I thought a rando arrives precisely when he means to.
That's true. Yeah. They do.
Okay. Now we look more like the Brady Bunch a little bit. Now we have the right.
Are you Alice?
I could be.
What's a Brady Bunch?
Rebecca.
That's right.
I'm lost.
Okay. Now, Nemo, I want you to stay in for the entire show. We love you dearly, but it's very late there. And if you need to bob out or whatever it is you call it over there, that's fine.
I'm feeling good so far, but thank you.
We're doing great. I mean, we're 37 minutes in. We've got a full set now. We're going to have Colby. Colby, I'm so glad you're here because it's the very next clip that I was starting to worry that you would not show for it because it has something to do with President Oaks' feelings about the scientific method as it relates to religion. So we'll be going to you first for your comment. Let me see if I can manage this whole thing with all these people here. Here we go. The scientific method.
We are grateful to know that there are two methods of gaining needed knowledge. One, the evolving disclosures of man discovered by the scientific method. And two, the truths disclosed by the spiritual method, which begins with faith in God and relies on scriptures, inspired teaching, and personal revelation. There is no ultimate conflict between knowledge gained by these different methods because God, our omnipotent, eternal Father, knows all truth and beckons us to learn by both methods.
You see, I thought there was no ultimate conflict between science and religion because ultimately religion caves and follows science at a respectful distance. What did you think about that, Colby?
Well, the way he's selling it is that as long as you presume the truth that comes out of the spiritual system that he's talking about takes precedence over any claim to scientific truth. Like, yeah, I remember listening to the whole talk and this part just thinking, well, like that's just a tautology. But yeah, if anytime the two conflict, you're going to say there's no real conflict because the religious side of the equation always wins. well, yeah, I mean, then you're never going to find a conflict. Congrats.
You see, ultimately, once you're dead and gone, all these things they'll all pan out. Science will agree with religion, but long after you're dead. I think that's the point, really. You got to hang in there. That's the be patient part at the end. So, John, what do you think?
I'm really, I remember meeting with Elder Holland a couple times, and, he told me he didn't think there was any conflict between organic evolution and being a faithful Mormon. And I love to hear that from an apostle. And I'm happy to hear Oaks is trying to be less anti-science, because I do think our church has a long, long history of being anti-science. I think that's bad. I think science isn't perfect, but it's the best method we have to arrive at demonstrable truth. And so I'm glad Oaks is being, relatively science affirming to the broad membership. I'm happy about that.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I think they have no choice but to try to reconcile science, as they call it, and human knowledge, as he calls it in his talk too, because it's just gone too far. But if you really listen to what he's saying, he's like, please don't leave over this supposed conflict with science and our religion, because eventually God will reveal more that will make science completely compatible. It's just that he hasn't revealed enough yet. And this is the same angle they took with evolution. There was a book or a pamphlet or something that came out a couple months ago. We talked about this on the newscast. And it's basically, don't be concerned with that apparent discrepancy there between, faith traditions and science. We just don't know all of God's knowledge or plan yet. Once we do, we'll go, oh, aha. And hopefully we haven't left over it, because all things will be made clear. I call it the kicking the can down the road method.
Yeah, and in a surprising move, he's going to do this gambit. He's going to say science is incomplete because it's continuing to evolve, but he's also going to say religion, i.e. Mormonism, is incomplete because God hasn't revealed a bunch of stuff. So he's going to say incomplete plus incomplete can equal potentially compatible. You just got to be patient. What did you think about this, Randy?
I actually thought that when I heard his comparison of the scientific method to the spiritual method, I thought that was pretty clever. And when I hear LDS leaders say something clever, I usually go online and try and figure out what mainstream Christian source they lifted it and frankly plagiarize it from, because they often do. I'll just say
Elder
that.
Bednar did that, didn't he?
Huh?
Elder Bednar did that in General Conference once. I think.
They all. Well, I don't want to say they all, but it's not infrequent that I catch them doing it. But this time, I got to say, it sounds like it was an original thought, and I thought it was clever. As somebody whose doctoral background is in epistemologies, the scientific method is an interesting choice. I think it makes a clever word exchange there with scientific and spiritual methods. But the scientific method, you form a hypothesis, you go in the lab, you test it, it's repeatable, it's falsifiable, and on and on. You can't do that with religion. You can't put it in a petri dish and test it. So it's kind of an odd, fit. But, when you're talking about philosophy and religion, you're really talking more about inference to the best explanation and abductive reasoning. I think I'm going on a little too much about this, but I thought it was a clever thing. But I thought, going beyond, and I give him credit for an original thing. I kind of liked it. But when it really breaks
Randy,
down,
I've got to say, am I the only person who's heard the same idea for 50 years in the church? Maybe you missed it, but I've heard it over and over again. To me,
I hadn't heard it.
Right when
I've heard perfect science and perfect religion go hand in hand, and the problem is it's not perfect.
So maybe it's just one of those things.
In my bio program at BYU, they had like a whole handout that they would give on the first day of most upper level science classes that had a whole series of quotes that made this not exactly the exact same phraseology, but the same exact point. The top quote was always from Brigham Young, that there basically can be no conflict between true science and true religion, I think is the phrase. I'll look and see if I can find that, but they would say that a lot. Because when you're in these upper division, like human evolution courses, you're learning things that can be problematic for like Joseph Fielding Smith's version of Mormonism.
So, Randy, although I appreciate you're trying to give props to President Oaks, maybe they're not completely merited, at least on this specific thing.
That could be. You know, when I went to BYU, I majored in finance and accounting, so I wasn't in the sciences, and I don't have that background. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Hey, Rebecca, it occurs to me. I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead. Go to Rebecca.
Oh, can I give that quote real quick while there's confusion? I'm going to take advantage of the confusion. Brigham Young taught there is no true religion without true science, and consequently, there is no true science without true religion.
Well, there you have it. Now, John, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say, unfortunately, I'm glad they're being pro-science. The truth is, science is devastating to Mormonism. So he promotes science. There's a reason why the church has always dissed science. It's because whether it's the Book of Mormon, the Book of Abraham, parts of the Bible. What's that, Nemo?
I said the field of genetics.
Yeah, genetics. Like pretty much every field of science condemns a literal belief in Mormon doctrine, theology, and scripture. So it's probably to his disadvantage to promote science, but I'm so glad he's doing it.
Yeah, to the extent, John, that like the Heartlanders, a big proponent of the Heartlanders, they like literally believe in a completely different model, geological model. Like they believe that the center of the earth is water.
It's an ice core, right?
Yeah, an ice core.
I think science is so problematic now that he was forced to address it, because otherwise he would not have addressed it, right? Streisand effect. Kind of like polygamy and polygamy deniers. So problematic that they have to come out and say, yes, Joseph was a polygamist. They're not going to address it. They're not going to draw attention until it is so big and so many people are wondering or have questions. Then they'll finally address it. And, I'm sure they've weighed it out. Like John said, it's problematic to address it. Is it more problematic not to address it? They have to make that decision. And just to say science in general, just a very blanket word, science, it means all disciplines, because everything is at odds with Mormonism.
Well, he doesn't want to say church history again. So, Nemo, we give you the final word on this discussion.
Well, I mean, I have nothing to say here that hasn't already been said, so I think we can move on.
Okay, very good. Now, the next slide, I have titled, and I titled it before the show. Number 7, living prophets trump dead scientists. Now, that's not completely accurate, because actually prophets trump living scientists too. But here's what he has to say. He continues to talk about science and its proper relationship with.
I think it's Darwin. I think it's Darwin's birthday, by the way, today. Charles Darwin's birthday.
Now, do you mean your beagle?
No, I mean Charles Darwin, the professor.
Oh, Charles Darwin.
Who your beagle is named after.
My beagle is named after him, yes, because Darwin's ship was the beagle.
Ship.
There you go.
Okay, so great.
I was going to say, no, it's not his
birthday to Charles Darwin. I don't know.
I'm a day ahead. I'm in the UK. It is Friday here, so
it's
not his birthday here, but for you guys, it is.
Greetings.
Yeah. Friday the 13th, Nemo.
It is Friday the 13th.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go to living prophets trump dead scientists.
Those who don't believe in God and formally reject traditional religious morality and rely solely on the tests of scientific evidence fulfill a Book of Mormon description of those who live without God in the world. Elder Richard L. Evans had a good answer for those who are caught off balance by some scientific evidence that seems to be contrary to what we interpret from the scriptures. Quote, "There may be some seeming discrepancies," he said. "Do not worry about them. Eternity is a long time. I have great respect for learning, for academic endeavor, and the university atmosphere. I have great respect for science and scientists and for the search for truth. But remember this, science, after all, even when it is true and final and factual, is simply man's discovering a few things that God already knows and controls in his ordering of the universe. God has not told us all that he knows. We believe in continuous revelation. Be patient, keep humble, and balanced in all things. End of quote. Humility, faith, and trust in the Lord are the remedies for wavering.
Don't interrupt, Nemo.
As the Book of Mormon teaches, the Lord doth bless and prosper those who put their trust in him. Trusting in the Lord is a particular need for all who wrongly discount the commandments of God and the teachings of his prophets by measuring them against the latest findings and wisdom of man.
Okay, Mr. Nemo.
Yeah.
You couldn't help yourself. You obviously have something on your mind. Care to share it with the rest of the class?
I will share it with the rest of the class. So, God here, as Dallin H paints him, is just the worst possible distributor of truth and information. Because what he's saying is, okay, fine. When human beings discover something scientifically, they're just discovering what God already knew. Cool. But if God already knew that thing, then why did God also reveal to a prophet hundreds, thousands of years ago a completely different piece of information, say about the age of the earth, or say about the origin of the peoples of the Book of Mormon? So if the genetic markers that have been discovered and the ways in which we can tell that the Native Americans are not Lamanites, why did he reveal to Joseph Smith that they were the ancestors of the people of the Book of Mormon? Why is God speaking out of both sides of his mouth, saying that it seems like a glib thing to say, oh, well, it's just stuff God already knew. Actually, that paints God in a terrible position as having given out false information at some point.
And you were laughing too, Colby. I couldn't help but notice.
Well, I mean, I kind of gave away where I was going to go with my last comment, but yeah, he just gives a tautology. Like, if God already knows everything and he's just constantly revealing things either through prophets or through scientists, like, that's just it's a completely unfalsifiable and uninteresting claim to me, because he's just claiming, like you had on there, the ultimate trump card. Like, okay, but as we talked about on last Saturday's episode together, RFM, their track record doesn't demonstrate that these guys come even close to touching like 18th century scientists, frankly. So I don't know. Very convenient, I guess I'd say, that they claim that there can never really be a conflict between, because what did he say? I think he used the phrase seeming discrepancy.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Seeming discrepancy between
only seeming. Seems, madam, seems.
Yeah. To Nemo's point, the problem isn't what we don't know through the scientific method. The problem is the things that we do know that are a direct conflict to the claims of Mormonism. And they always want to pretend like, well, we'll get more information. There's no additional information we can get that will change the things that we already do know, basically definitively. The problem with Native American DNA or Mayan DNA and the claims the Book of Mormon makes is not that we don't know. It's that we do know where the peoples who lived here in ancient America came from. That's the part of the equation they never want to talk about. And that's the unfortunate reality. The other thing I was snickering at is when Nemo was interrupting, I was thinking, Oaks is probably thinking if you interrupt him again, he'll excommunicate you again, Nemo. He'll do it again.
You can try, but I will just not worry about it. Because he said, don't worry about it. Eternity's a long time. Just don't. If you've got problems, just don't worry about them.
Eternity's a long time.
It's a long time. We'll figure it
out.
out.
It's a long time, but that's all the time after you're dead when you'll have to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's a pretty safe bet. So, John Dallin, what did you think?
I was annoyed by the seeming discrepancies. There are massive, blatant, deadly, devastating discrepancies between science and Mormon church truth claims. So, that was an unfortunate word choice. I do think this idea, when he says eternity is a long time, that feels like a thought-stopping technique rooted in fear. He's basically saying, if you go to hell, Mormon hell, or if you're separated from your family forever, that's a really long time. So don't let science get in the way of your faith. And that's just a way, in my opinion, to use fear to get you to stop thinking. And I think a healthy, safe, secure organization doesn't rely on fear-based thought-stopping techniques. They want you thinking. They want you questioning, because they've got nothing to fear, nothing to hide.
Good point. Hey, Rebecca, I thought it was kind of funny, though unintended at the time, that I thought maybe you were Alice, if this was the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
And the reason it's funny is because Sam the Butcher has your photograph pinned to his wall in Lubbock, Texas.
Well, there you go.
What did you think about this clip?
What you're talking about. I think he's channeling a little bit of Thomas Dolby when he's saying, don't be blinded by science, right? Sorry, that's an old 80s song if you don't know. But I just
She blinded me
with science. That's right. Yeah. For you younger viewers or listeners, yeah.
It's too late at night for this.
We're all old and poor Nemo. Hurry, somebody put the song on. But no, don't be blinded by science, right? And I just seriously, what kind of members do you want in this church? Why are you relegating them to this point of view? It reminds me of when I went to the Bean Museum on BYU campus, and they do have a natural history museum. They have all kinds of quotes about exactly what we're talking about, how, evolution and religion, it can all be compatible. But when we walked over to the display of skulls throughout, the millennium, in other museums, you see those in order. So even a child goes, oh, wow, look, this is evolving. They didn't have them displayed like that at BYU. They had 1 million years here, 300,000 years here, 10 years. You know what I mean? It was in a way that you're like, oh, cool, I'm looking at science. You would never put it together. It creates people like my relative who I went to the Grand Canyon with. And as we looked out over the vista and read the sign about how old it was and how it was created, she said, it's not that old. It's only 6,000 years old. If those are the members that you want in your church, this is what you're doing by this kind of rhetoric. And it makes me mad for people, honestly.
I don't think it's a want, Rebecca. I think it's just who they can keep at this point.
That is possible. Yeah, because those blinders are maybe like this. They really have to be about like this at this point, honestly.
The church is becoming its own version of the Drones Club. Randall Bell, what do you think?
Well, I think I agree with the comments made so far. I think most of the high points have been hit. I think that the one word that strikes me about his science and religion discussion is the word is awkward. It was just it didn't fit well, and it was very clumsy. I don't think his points were really resonant. And I would just want to kind of reiterate that he takes definitively definitive findings where we have the answers and reframes them as questions. And Mormons apologists are famous for that, where they take things where we know very definitively there is no Hebrew DNA in the Book of Mormon people. We know that. So they reframe it as a question. Well, we don't know yet. And they do that with everything on down the list when it comes to conflicts between the Mormon narrative and the findings that we do have the answers from science.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, everybody, wind up, because this is going to be number 8, and I title this clip The Big One. This is 1 minute in the talk, and this is the one that's been getting all or most of the discussion. So listen to this, and I'll start off with John Dallin and go around the horn and get your take on what it is President Oaks has to say here about you, me, and all of us.
A third way to draw closer to our Savior is to associate with other believers. This includes discussions with trusted associates, local church members, and other faithful friends. Remember, to survive spiritually, you will need the constant influence of the Holy Ghost. An abundance of speculation and false information in podcasts and on social media surround us. Some may protest or question the truth of church doctrine without knowing or even understanding the fullness of that doctrine. Don't be persuaded by false or inaccurate information. Discuss your concerns with faithful, well-informed friends, and always take those concerns to the Lord.
John Dallin.
Well, yeah. I, as Rebecca was kind enough to mention, I authored a post on Substack, basically entitled "Can Mormon Podcasters Finally Declare Victory?" And I'll just summarize a few of those points. I certainly won't go into all 10, but it's been almost 21 years since Mormon themed podcasting broke up on the scene. I started Mormon Stories in 2005, and before Mormon Stories podcast and before all of our podcasts, the church could just hide information, lie, misrepresent its history, and excommunicate and punish and demean anyone who told the truth about the church or criticized the church. And if you were ex-Mormon, or if you felt like you needed to leave the church, oftentimes you would just move out of state and disconnect from your family because you were alone and had nobody. And the fact that Elder Oaks 21 years later is willing to mention podcasts in his inaugural address to its members, to me, I'm taking it as a victory for truth, a victory for compassion and kindness, and frankly, a victory for Mormonism. If I had to list the things that Mormon-themed podcasts have done over the past 20 years, they've provided informed consent to hundreds of thousands of both Mormons and never Mormons. I think that's a good thing. We have forced the LDS Church to become more transparent, whether it's the Gospel Topics essays, the book Saints, whether it's the Joseph Smith Papers Project website, whether it's Ensign Peak, or the Floodlit and all the rampant child sexual abuse. I think or even the changing of LGBT practices. I think Mormon-themed podcasts, have played a direct role in those improvements. We've helped normalize faith crises so that ex-Mormons no longer feel crazy, no longer feel alone. We've helped provide them stories and resources to build happy, healthy, beautiful lives. And we even forced the Mormon Church in 2018 to abandon its own brand. The Mormon Church used to be proud of the title Mormon. Gordon B. Hinckley said that Mormon means more good, but we clobbered them. Mormon-themed podcasts clobbered the Mormon Church so horrendously that it realized from an SEO perspective it was finished. And so it abandoned its own brand and left it to not only Mormon podcasts, but to the broader Mormon community. And, and there's lots of other things I list in this article, but I think we've done an amazing work, and I hate to be self-congratulatory. And when I say self, I mean all of us. But I really do think we all should feel very proud of the way that we've moved so many important needles to make the church healthier, less damaging, and to make leaving the church healthier and less damaging for so many people.
Your thoughts, Rebecca?
I agree with John, and I want to tell everybody again, go read his Substack. I think all of these external influences have done more for the Mormon Church and the people in the Mormon Church. That's what I'm talking about. Our friends, our relatives, our children, our parents who are in the Mormon Church. We have done more for them than the church itself has done. And I have to say that quote, it's almost insulting. Does he not think that people who step away have not done that? Talk to friends, begged leaders for answers, gone to bishops and said, please give me a reason to stay. You've got to explain this. Almost everyone I know has done that, wanted desperately to stay, wanted it to be true, and talked to everyone within the church that they could find until they finally had to untether. And then maybe, hopefully, found somebody on the outside, like maybe all of us or the many others that they could get answers from, find community. And when I say others, the othering in this, I think it's just a continuation of the Think Celestial talk, where he said, don't listen to counsel for those who don't believe. This is the same kind of thing. This gives people ammunition to say, I can't really talk to you, Mom, because, you're not faithful. I mean, these are anecdotal examples, right? So the idea of this othering, that you only need to talk to people in your silo, because that's the only way you're going to be able to remain in, because you won't get outside information. That is so harmful and hurtful, because everyone is in a mixed faith scenario. I don't know a single family where there isn't somebody, that's on the out or on the in. And so this is very harmful. And he said it many many times, only talk to these kinds of people for your answers. So that's hurtful. And I wish they would change that rhetoric, because it really hurts real people and it's very painful.
It does strike me that if we were to take his words literally and seriously, it sounds like an injunction to shun.
That's what I'm saying. Othering and shunning. It is a prophetic injunction to honor and shun, just like the Think Celestial talk.
Nemo, you had a thought.
I think that the church is full of varied people, and so I think there's going to be a couple of ways this is read. So I have two quick thoughts. The first is it's lovely to be living rent-free in Dallin H. Oaks' head. It's nice to have a second property. I never thought I'd get to that point in my life, but I seem to have attained it. And then the second, possibly more serious point is what I think we're seeing here actually is something different. Because when I was excommunicated, I wasn't allowed to have the High Council attend. In fact, part of the reason I was excommunicated was because I shared some of my concerns with the High Council through email, right? I approached my priesthood leaders with concerns and I was excommunicated for it. Now, we all know there was far more to it than that, but that was one of the reasons cited. And so what he's actually doing is encouraging people to talk about these problems, talk about these concerns, talk to people. That's dangerous. Because what the church has successfully done so far is make people feel like when they're in that building, they're on their own. If they're the doubter in that room, they are on their own. They can't talk to their neighbor. They don't know how their neighbor will react. They don't know if their neighbor will then tell the bishop and they might lose their temple recommend and not be able to go to their child's wedding. They don't know if they're going to lose their calling and they're standing within the church. That used to be the fear that was there keeping people in line. He's had to just take the lid off that and go, no, talk to people. Don't listen to the outsiders. At least talk within the church. Try and keep it in the house. So again, it's just showing how they're losing ground. They can't just have this stay stum idea anymore. He's actually inviting people to talk about it. I think that's a win. I don't think it's going to be a win for him, because I think as more people realize they're not alone, they'll realize, oh, so you have these concerns too, so I'm not going crazy. So maybe there's something in this.
Was that both of your thoughts?
Yeah, that's me done.
Okay, Randy, thank you.
Well, I think RFM, you're absolutely right. This is the big one. And I got to tell you, John, you're making progress. You started off talking about the tens of thousands that have been influenced. Then you went to hundreds of thousands. I'll just remind you, it's millions. I'm going to stand by that. But that being said, when all I've really got is my experience. When Mormonism blew up because of gospel topic essays, there was, 50 plus years in me that was just clinging and grasping to hang on to it any way I possibly could. So I went to Fair Mormon and I thought, this is ridiculous. I went to the podcast and they made just logical sense and they were backed up just like you do, RFM and Bill Reel. You just have document after document. It's like a perfectly laid out court case where the evidence is right in front of you. And I go back to Fair Mormon and their answers were just so, frankly, Beavis and Butthead. I don't think would even be compelled by their arguments. So the podcasting has really been a phenomenal technology, because it's here you've got a $500 billion organization put on equal footing with a bunch of people with very, frankly, humble studios podcasting that are gaining enormous audiences in the millions around the world. So I think they do have a lot to be worried about. And I think the last thing I'm going to say is my little diatribe. I behind the scenes, I kid you guys, and I see enough going on that I know that you folks are very principled. And in my worldview, whether you believe what I believe isn't really germane. It's more, am I associated with principled people, whether they actually land on what I believe or not. And I kid with you guys, kind of half joking and half to annoy you. And I guess another half, a lot of halves here, a genuine belief that you're doing God's work. Anytime you're talking about truthful things, if there is a God, and I believe there is, you're doing God's work, and I'm all for it. And that's why I'm so supportive and hopefully contributing in my little way to the conversations. So I just got to say, rah, podcast, because you're really being very, very effective.
Well, thank you. And it's good to have you aboard, Dr. Bell. Colby.
Some of us don't even have a studio, Randy. We're broadcasting from our bedrooms. I had one thought, which is I can't remember if it comes later in his talk or it came earlier in his talk or if it was in one of the clips you mentioned. But he acknowledged kind of on the front end of his talk, if I remember correctly, the reality. I think he used the specific example. Every one of us knows a returned missionary who's left activity or something like that, which tells me
makes
to
it so
Rebecca's
wordy. He makes it so wordy instead of just saying left the church.
right.
He went into a
right.
period who have had periods of inactivity.
Period of time.
And then wrote a letter about it.
Yes.
To Rebecca's point, what I'm saying is he knows the scope of the exclusionary policy he's putting out in this part of the talk because of what he said earlier in the talk. If everybody knows someone who falls into that bucket that he's basically telling people not to talk to, he is literally putting this injunction out, and he knows how it's going to affect and how broad it's going to affect. And I think that is profoundly irresponsible. The other thing I'll point out, and because that clip was very powerful, but one of the things I think is really interesting, and again, you guys might have covered this before I was able to join you, but his list of 4 things that we're breaking down, he introduces them by saying, these are the tools to help all Latter-day Saints overcome present or future doubts. Let's just think about that for a second. These are the tools he's giving you to resolve questions you haven't even asked yet. He is telling on himself so hard here, and he's absolutely right. If you refuse to ever associate with people who have a different perspective than you, of course you're not going to change your mind. But that is not necessarily a virtue. If, to Randy's point, if you're interested in chasing after truth or following after truth or doing the best approximation we can, you don't follow this advice. This is terrible advice unless your objective is to never change your mind.
And he will go on to explicitly tell people to surround themselves with other believers. Really circle the wagons. If you needed a segue there, RFM.
Well, thank you. Actually, I don't, but because I have this other one, right? Right now, there's 793 people watching. Thank you all for watching. But I got to tell you, are you crazy? You are going against the prophet's advice. You should not be watching this podcast. You are in danger of hellfire right now. So I just want to make sure that you understand the stakes involved. Now, going into the next clip, however, this plays upon, in my mind, what he just said in the prior clip, because he starts talking about, you shouldn't listen to people who think they're talking about doctrine, but they may not even understand the fullness of that doctrine. I'm not sure what the heck he's talking about. When you talk in such generalities, you really shouldn't expect people to understand what you're talking about. The one thing that I did understand was now when he starts talking about himself and the other apostles, and that apparently they are among those who do not understand the fullness of the gospel or the fullness of the doctrine. That's what he said, the fullness of the doctrine, because he's going to start talking about pre-mortality and post-mortality.
The Lord has told us very little about some things. For example, we know very little about the spirit world that follows mortality, or even the spirit world that preceded it. This lack of knowledge can be harmful when we rely on beliefs on these subjects from well-meaning people who teach beyond what God has chosen to reveal. Trusting God in what we know and what we don't know is a great protection against doubts based on mistaken ideas instead of what God has chosen to reveal.
You are muted, RFM.
So
I cannot hear you.
Okay.
That's usually my job, Nima.
Yes.
Sorry.
So anyway, what I hear him saying is, first he's saying, don't listen to people who talk about doctrine because they may not understand the fullness of that doctrine, but you should listen to us even though we don't have a clue as to the fullness of these doctrines. But Rebecca, you get to go first on this one.
Yeah, I had an interesting take on this, and I believe he is finally addressing something that we have been waiting for the church to address, and that is the people that talk about past lives, near-death experiences, the visions of glory crowd, and he calls them well-meaning. He didn't use that kind of a word for the rest of us that are trying to shine a spotlight on history or scholarship or anything like that. But these people are well-meaning, but they probably shouldn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, they just killed their children.
Yeah, and I was going to say, who are these well-meaning people? Is it Lori Vallow? Is it Chad Daybell? Is it Jody Hildebrand? These are the people that had these views. So I thought that was interesting that he was venturing out to kind of censure them a little bit, bring it up and saying they mean well, but everybody, please don't listen to these stories about your past life, or if you were married to Nephi, or if you had a near-death experience. This is not good. So again, he's just kind of crafting whom you can learn from, the right kinds of people that are going to tell you the right kind of things that are going to keep you in. But I thought it was interesting that he even brought that up, because all the trouble that this Visions of Glory crowd, the things that have come out of this, they have not addressed that yet. And he kind of did. Although, will anyone else pick that up? Probably not. It's probably just me.
You may be a good interpreter, and that may be what he means, but I guarantee you there's no Visions of Glory believer who's going to think that he's talking to them.
Exactly.
So
they're not going to recognize it. Yeah.
It's worthless if that's the point.
Yeah.
Dr. Bell.
Well, he caught my attention with his bringing up the spirit world and how little we know. But if we really go back in Mormon history, not too far, we know a few interesting things. We know that God is a resurrected man. And this is a side tangent, but you can't reconcile Mormon God with the Big Bang Theory, because where's the God that started it all with Genesis 1:1? That's a side tangent. So God's a resurrected man. We know a lot there. Near Kolob, well, that's telling us something, with lots of wives. I mean, if you believe Brigham Young and the Journal of Discourses and what was said over the pulpit, we know plenty about the next life. And that's why so many guys in Mormonism are so gung-ho. It's kind of like, quite honestly, it's kind of like the guys that flew the planes into the World Trade Center getting their harems all lined up. And I know that sounds far-fetched and maybe crass, but that's I've talked to enough active Mormons behind the scenes over the decades to know that that's really what a lot of guys' minds. So I just took exception with his notion that we don't know that much, because a lot of Mormon guys think they know plenty and they know exactly what they're driving for.
Your thoughts, Nemo?
Well, if people are really paying attention to this, then the book sales of people like the Givens are going to absolutely tank, because church apologists, and particularly people like the Givens, make a living out of teaching a version of the church that fills in these gaps of things we don't know, or what they might speculate, or how they think the church should be. And I've had a problem with this for a long time, that a lot of what is presented by apologists is a version of the church that doesn't exist over the pulpit. And so this applies to them too. What Dallin H is saying here is like these well-meaning people, Jasmine Rapley, well-meaning, she's actually, putting out a version of things that we don't know. She's speculating. She's trying to create arguments and ways in which, these things can all be knitted together. But if it's not come over the pulpit, then she's doing what Dallin H has just said people shouldn't be doing. And that goes for apologists in general.
Yes, when Dallin started talking about podcasts, not listening to podcasts that spread misinformation, I thought, whoa, Psych Word Radio, you're on the chopping block. Not to mention Jacob Hansen. Oh my gosh. What do you think, Colby?
Well, I think Nemo just hinted at this, but what I felt when he's talking about well-meaning people who are basically talking about things they don't fully understand, he's talking about himself. He's willing to testify to things he doesn't possibly actually know in a way that can be demonstrated to anybody. And even the things we do know about the spirit world. So Randy was talking about statements Brigham Young's made about he made statements about the premortal spirit world, and Joseph F. Smith has Doctrine and Covenants is a 138. 138 is this grand vision of the spirit world. Is it 137? Sorry.
I think it's 8. I think 7.
Okay. I think
with the only religion with a map of it. I think.
Yeah.
Oh, with the map of which?
Of the spirit
world.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The only
well,
ones
it's kind
with
of
an actual
detailed.
map. Sorry, carry on, Colby.
You got to get your man
okay.
McNally.
That's okay. My point was going to be, one, I don't even think it's accurate to say we don't know all that much about the spirit world. Mormonism probably claims more knowledge of the spirit. Well, we're really the only that believes in that like temporary spirit world anyways, before the resurrection, but we know quite a bit about it. It's weird to say that we don't. Was Joseph F. Smith a well-meaning or well-intentioned and well-meaning person that just was saying things that he may not know? I mean, that's kind of how I look at all of this, is like he's just telling on himself, because the thing he never tells you is how to tell the difference because what he's stuck on is these are the things that God has revealed, and these are the things you know. He doesn't tell you a consistent way to know the things that God has revealed from the things that well-intentioned but misled people have taught you, because that could include so many church leaders. I mean, I'll give you a specific example. My patriarchal blessing makes claims, very specific claims, about figures in the Book of Mormon that I was premortal. I can't remember if it says like companions or friends with.
Who?
Yeah, there's three specific figures. It's Alma the Younger, Captain Moroni, and I can't remember the last one because it's been
You were popular. You were sitting at the popular table at lunch.
You weren't a rando in the premortal existence.
No.
Oh, that's right.
Woo.
That's right. I was
playing bridge.
We were playing bridge,
And
yeah, or
Moroni had to
Scrabble
be
or
the dummy.
something.
Okay.
We were playing Reformed Egyptian Scrabble. That's what we were doing. But,
Reformed
hardest
Egyptian
kind.
rat screw.
yeah. But my point is, he was making claims about my premortal spiritual existence. Was he a well-intentioned person that just didn't know what he was talking about? I mean, that's how I look at all of this stuff. So I feel like he's just talking about himself.
You know, the unfalsifiable is a blank canvas upon which we can paint anything we like. John?
You know, the thing that I'm often stunned at is that we have a $500 billion church and they don't know some just basic facts of psychology or of marketing or PR. The church should have learned in its pornography campaigns that constantly talking about pornography to 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds, mentioning it 2, 3, 4 times a week in church at every general conference, that what they were going to do is make pornography viewing more common and more prevalent, not less. That's just basic psychology. Don't think of the pink elephant. You think of the pink elephant. It's also called the Streisand effect. If Oakes were taking wise advice or thinking this through or just reading a Psychology 101 book, he would realize he needs to stop talking about faith crises because he's just going to make them more common. By telling the members, don't look at podcasts, don't talk to people that struggle, don't have a faith crisis, whatever you do. We all know what happens. He's actually making them more likely. And he's got enough money and power and smart people he could purchase their advice from, where he should just, not continuing to inflict self-inflicted wounds on him and the leadership of the church. That's what I think.
I think this is what they're telling him.
To do? You think they're telling him to do this?
I think these are the worst PR people that money can buy.
Or Kieran is a PR professional. Patrick Kieran, that was his job.
Or he's too arrogant to listen to his wise advisors.
I mean, we're talking about a lawyer who literally said research is not the answer. Like, it's something like that is so absurd. I can't even believe he said that out loud, and then that people continue to follow him. Like, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard.
Rebecca.
Could I bring up one more little point from this? I know I already spoke on it, but have you noticed?
Did you already speak? I wanted to have you speak twice.
I know you're going to give me a double helping because you know I like to talk, but no.
Take that, patriarchy.
This word, that's right. Take that. The word speculative, he uses that a lot. And I've been in conversations. I don't want to say arguments. Maybe they are with the different people on my different platforms. But he uses the word speculative as if everything that we are putting out, or people that don't follow the church party line is speculative. But everything they're saying is not speculative. And I had a conversation with somebody where they said, I do not consider any of these revealed truths to be speculative. They're a solid fact. It happened.
We know them.
Joseph saw God and Jesus. That is not speculation. What you're saying about the book of Abraham maybe not being what it is, that's speculative. So that's what we're up against. You know what I mean? There is a certain group of people that those things are not speculative. They are revealed and they are as solid as gold. So I don't know what you do about that, but he certainly does seem to say speculative, what all of you are saying. What we have, it's good. It's set. So that's an interesting way. It's reassuring, I think, to the members because I do have that mindset.
Yes, the few that remain are quite reassured. We're going to go to Randy Bell first after this next clip. This is where I think he comes out the most clearly and talks about how we should not mix with non-believers. Do not mix with mudbloods. Nemo?
Hey.
I share the experience of a wise stake president here on this campus. He was approached by a young man in his stake who admired him and asked him to mentor him in business. After a few weeks, the young man confided, "I should share with you, I've decided to step away from the church. I no longer believe." The surprise stake president immediately began to share his profound testimony of the gospel that had brought him so much joy, peace, and inspiration. The young man sat stunned and stared back at him with tears in his eyes and said, "I've not heard anyone speak like that in months. I've been hanging out with friends who don't believe." I say to all of you, as that wise stake president said to this young man, seek friends and associates who are striving to follow the Lord, with whom you can feel the Spirit and reinforce your faith. Surround yourselves with people who believe. A great Book of Mormon prophet taught this truth. Believe in God. Believe that He is, and that He created all things both in heaven and in earth. Believe that He has all wisdom and all power, both in heaven and in earth. Believe that man doth not comprehend all the things which the Lord can comprehend. And again, believe that ye must repent of your sins and forsake them, and humble yourselves before God. End of quote.
I believe that's one of your friends, Colby, right? King Benjamin. He was one of the guys you were hanging out with in the pre-existence.
I think that was Alma, wasn't it?
Alma the younger. He was the naughty one. So not just our friends need to be Mormons, but even our associates. What do you think, Randy?
You know, my head just wants to explode. With that one, when I listened to it yesterday, it's just like that is the opposite of where this should be going. It goes along with the theme of don't do the research. Stay in your bubble, stay in your comfortable bubble. And frankly, I think I need to call him out on this one, because he says this conversation between a person who's thinking about leaving the church and a stake president. I don't think that conversation ever happened, because the way the conversation usually goes is, hey, I've got this problem with the Book of Abraham, and I got this problem with DNA in the Book of Mormon, and I got this problem and that problem, and they simply don't have answers. So to just bear your testimony, which is all pathos, it's all emotion, and not deal with the logic or the ethics of the questions, I frankly don't think that conversation happened, because I don't think an emotionally charged testimony is going to do the trick with people that have real, legitimate, logical, ethical questions. I just don't believe them. As far as hanging out with non-believers, I think I've already covered that territory as far as where I'm coming from. I frankly don't care what people ultimately land on or believe. Those actually change. Whatever, I may be changing my mind. I always reserve the right to change my mind, and I think any person that subscribes to critical thinking does that. Again, it comes down to, are the people that I want to hang out with principled, and do they have sound reasoning? Bar Ehrman is one of my fans. He's an atheist. And yet when I have a question on the Bible, the biblical text, I don't go to a Christian minister, because I get too much spin and static and noise. I go to Bart. He answers the question fair and square, and it's like, okay, I think I can take that one to the bank. So again, all the way down, I think he's just getting it wrong. And frankly, I just don't believe his story with the stake president.
Yeah. While you were speaking, and by the way, did you mean that he's one of your friends?
No, he's Randy's biggest fan.
No, I'm his biggest
fingers.
Yeah, you had said the reverse, and that's why there was a little bit of mirth going on.
Oh,
I knew what you meant.
I believe it. I believe
You're
it.
humble.
I was
You're
going to
more humble
challenge
than
you, Randy, and say that's us.
I
when
know
you were
he's got
talking-
Randy's.
where are your
I know
biggest-
he's got Randy's face tattooed on his back. Bart Ehrman does.
Where are
I
your
heard
biggest fans, Randy?
Okay, I got it. I screwed up. You know what I
Okay,
meant.
but while you were speaking, okay, I wasn't piling on, by the way. I just pointed
No,
it out initially. and
Where
then
I'd
back
say,
to
where are your biggest
But-
fans, Randy?
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Okay, so anyway, so while you were speaking, it did make me think that what we have here is the spectacle of a person who claims to speak for God, an apostle of Jesus Christ, telling the members of his church not to associate with non-believers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it all goes back to the whole thing about lazy learners. I mean, he's just a chip off the old block of Russell M. Nelson. Lazy learners, lax disciples, evil apostates, doubters, disbelievers. Those are the people you want to engage with, in my mind. Are people, life would be so black and white boring if everyone I talked to thought like me. It would be a wacky world. I like the diversity. I like the exchange of new ideas, and that's why Black and Mormon, Mormonism is so black and white in my mind. And getting out of it, frankly, things go to full color.
It does seem to project weakness. I agree. Nemo, your thoughts?
I'll take things that never happened when it comes to that story for 1,000. I think certainly not the way it's told. I really struggle with this idea more broadly. I think it's no secret that I have a family member who has shunned me over what I do and the fact that I'm on this show right now and other things like that. And this idea that you're only to associate with believers, it works if you're in Utah. And I think this shows his very Utah-centric view of the world. That cool, right? You can just create your little bubble. You can hide. How's that going to work in parts of the world where the church is shrinking? It would just cause the church to decline faster because people will start to get lonely or isolated or withdraw from their community. I think one of the things I've noticed about this temple building in places where there's hardly any members to man the temples is it takes them out of their communities. It takes these people out of their communities and puts them in buildings, members only access buildings, in some of their only spare time in the week. And I think that's part of the goal, is to try and create a more insular people, because Dallin H's attitude towards podcasts and people like us is clearly showing that he knows that people's faith can't survive in the marketplace of ideas, as Randy is describing it, in encountering all these different ideas. Randy said that's a boring world, but it's a safe place for your faith. And that's what he's trying to drive people towards, as a place where their faith isn't going to get challenged. And the only way to do that is to just circle the wagons, be like, no, I'm going to create an echo chamber.
Yeah. Colby?
Yeah, when it comes to a boring world, I mean, one of the things I'm struck by is the church at this point with Come Follow Me. Like, you literally will use the same manual when you're 5 years old that you'll be using when you're 65 years old. Think about what that means. Like, think about how little meat is actually on that bone for you to be learning from the same manual with like 6 decades of experience between the two, between those two age groups. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Randy and Nemo already hit it, but I'll just say, yeah, the way that story was told about the stake president is just like, that definitely didn't happen. And if it did, it didn't happen the way it was recorded. There's so many of these stories that are told either in devotionals like this or in general conference where it's like so obvious that it didn't happen in the way that they're talking about it. My personal favorite is the one involving Mick Jagger, because that definitely didn't happen. Anyways, I'm just struck by that. And I'm also struck by the fact that testimony, like the stake president just turning around and bearing his testimony. What testimony really is a claim to know something that you can't demonstrate to anyone else, right? It's just saying, I know this. And when someone says, why do you know this? I know it because I know it. It's the claim to know something by knowing it. And I know I've shared this with you before, RFM, but I'm always, when I think about it that way, I'm always struck by this quatrain from Omar Khayyam, where he says, and do you think that unto such as you, a maggot-minded, starved, fanatic crew, God gave a secret and denied it me? Well, what matters it? Believe that too. And if I were the kid talking to the stake president, I would thank him for sharing things that are important to him, and that I'm glad that those things bring him peace and value in his life. But that doesn't do anything for me. If you really care about whether your beliefs are epistemically grounded, someone else's testimony isn't going to move the needle one bit. And I think that's the significance of that line or that quatrain to me, and I think about it often.
Yes. Under the heading of things that didn't happen, can I ask you a question? I did not go to BYU. I did not attend. I understand there are certain requirements of the student body, which gives me the question, how does a student at BYU go for months without hearing somebody bear their testimony? I'm not sure it's possible.
It would not happen, especially with the crack.
A long time ago, it could have. They didn't track you like they used to.
I was going to say
a much older story.
With Clark Gilbert, our new, the new apostle who was kind of cracking down at BYU in a fundamentalist direction, it definitely would not be a current story. And I think he shared it like it was a current story, if I remember correctly. So anyways.
John Dallin, you went to BYU. What did you think of this clip and anything else you'd like to say?
Go Cougs.
Yeah, well, I think I've said enough. I think I've made my main points. The thing that I want to say, are we watching more clips, RFM, or are we?
There's one more to go.
There's one more to go.
I'll give you a chance for your closing statement in just a minute.
Okay, I'll wait.
All right, that's it for you then right now?
Yeah.
Do you think this story happened?
Probably some derivation of it, but it's probably misremembered in some crucial ways.
Is it like in the job description for LDS prophets to deceive us? Do they have to do that? Is it a requirement? Because it seems like they all do. Okay, Rebecca.
Memory's a tricky thing, right? I mean, I think we'd all admit memory can be tricky.
Yes, but it all tends one way, and that's toward the Mormon church. Then it stops becoming memory and looks more like the L word. Rebecca.
I love watching this version of John and RFM discuss things back and forth. It's fun for me.
I'm in the middle. It's like, what is happening? No, I think this story happened, but the exact opposite, because this is exactly what happened to my co-host Landon. He went into a church leader and just unleashed for half an hour saying this problem, this, I've studied this, I've done that. And deer in the headlights, the guy just said, I know the church is true. I know that, he bore this fervent testimony. And Landon goes, thank you. You've answered my question, right? He knew there were no answers. And I think what President Oaks is saying is he knows that the knowledge or the testimony of the members is so fragile, right? It's so delicate and there are no answers that you really must just kind of remove yourself. And I will bring up, I had this thought when they changed the missionary age for boys to 18 and now girls. This is what they're doing. They're creating people who never, ever will have the chance while they're still forming and learning to have outside experiences. It used to be, you go when you're a little older, you have a gap year, you go to college, you have an internship, you study abroad, you do something out of high school, and then you choose, to go on a mission. For girls, you have even longer to do that. So look at it, how it is now. Your senior year is mission prep the entire time. You are under the control of your leaders, checking in with bishops and your parents and your neighbors and friends and expectation. As soon as you're out of high school, you are very quickly on your mission where, again, you're under the control of the president, the companions. It's a complete control system. And now with everyone being so young together, then you're married and you're under each other's control and the church expectation and the family expectation. And then you have children that you put under your control. There's no moment where you come up for air to go, who am I? What do I think? What do I want? And that happens when there are those gaps. They don't want any gap like that, not at all. And certainly not to talk to another person that might shape that delicate, very delicate, fragile belief that you have. Soapbox.
Can I say one thing about that? I love what you just said, Rebecca, in the sense that, there are so many of the believing apologists who point to the damage that ex-Mormon podcasts do to families. And I think one of the things I think when I hear what you're talking about, the lack of this gap, is there are people for whom, regardless of anything that any of us have ever done, the church will not work for them in 5, 10, 20 years. And the way the church is erasing those gaps and those abilities for people to really ask themselves, do I believe these things, rather than just like continuing on that track, is what causes that. John, you've made this point repeatedly very well, which exposing the truth, talking about the truth, and then the effects that has in someone's life, that's not your fault. Like the church set those dominoes up a long time ago. And I guess I just think about, I think about those people who are going to divorce their spouses because their spouses don't believe anymore. And I honestly am really heartbroken because it's not something that's worth losing a good relationship over. Just the fact that you believe these differently about these things.
Yes, he doesn't talk about the difficulties that taking his advice seriously would cause with members of the family who don't believe. And God forbid a spouse, because he's basically saying don't associate with your wife or your husband.
Yeah, mixed faith marriages are really going to suffer there. I think we should take the maxim from Dietrich Uchtdorf. I think it was him who said, "Don't judge me because I sin differently than you do." Don't know who he stole that from. But we should say, okay, don't judge me because I believe differently than you do. If the church could adopt that position, I think they'd do very well.
That's an interesting idea. Thank you for sharing it with us. We've got one more clip. Then we'll have a round of comments starting with Nemo on this one. Oof. This is where Elder Oaks tells us, well, he's got to cover the base. He's got one final base to cover, and that's for the people. You're trying to find the answers. They're sure not going to find them from him because he's not touching them with the 10-foot pole. He just says, get closer to Jesus, and that'll do the trick. But in the meantime, while you're waiting for the answers that will never come, he says you need to do service. And I want to ask, when we get done with this clip, whether you think, as I do, that President Oaks means something very specific and special when he says service.
We are all a work in progress. We are all at different places on what President Nelson called the covenant path. We need to be patient with one another, and occasionally even with ourselves. Overcoming doubt, resolving conflicts between the evolving understanding of science and the sometimes incomplete teachings of religion can be a lengthy process, like building faith or acquiring humility. Hold on to the first article of faith, even if something else is uncertain. And while you wait, wait upon the Lord, which includes trusting in his timing as well as his promises. And while we wait, we should busy ourselves with service. Again and again, Jesus taught and demonstrated the power of service to others.
And while we wait, it sounds a bit like waiting for Godot. What did you think, Nemo?
Well, something I've been, I'm going to get really hippy-dippy here. It's late at night, but I've been practicing meditation for the past few months. I've been learning a lot through that. And one of the things I've learned from it is that sometimes you need to take time to let the answers come, or you need to take time to observe your thoughts, or you need to just take time not doing anything else to let things happen. What Oaks is advocating here is going, well, okay, we don't have answers, and there's an implication here that people are impatient for answers, and I don't think that's what's actually happening. I think he's asking people to stall rather than act on what seems to be obvious to them, and wait and wait and wait. And that tension is then what often causes people to snap in big ways because they're fed up of sitting in that sort of liminal space. And then he's saying, well, while you're trying to work it out, just be busy. And that busyness, to the point of meditation, that busyness is what will stop you from working it out. And they know that. They know that if you're busy serving, if you're busy doing callings in the church, if you're just flat out busy, you don't have time to think. You don't have time to sit down and work out how you feel about this newfound information, or how you feel about the fact that, circumstances have changed, or any of those sorts of things. You just don't have time. And that's why Gordon B. Hinckley used to say, forget yourself and go to work. It sounds like a really selfless thing, but actually what it's about is going, all right, just don't worry about any of it. Like you said earlier, don't worry. Just be busy doing stuff we want you to do instead.
Yes, thank you. When he says service, I don't think he just means generic service in helping old ladies across the street. No. I think he means something more specific. What do you think, Olby?
Are you talking about missionary service or temple service? It's one of those two.
I'm talking about church service.
Church
you
service.
Be an active Mormon and do all the stuff we're supposed to do until you die, and then you'll figure it out afterward.
I think my take on this part of the talk, and again, you guys might have talked about this before I was able to join you, but he started by talking about feeling the mantle like resting upon him. And I actually feel like this part of his talk is aimed at an audience of one person, and that person is Dallin Oaks. And what I mean by this is we know from the Boise rescue that Dallin Oaks said that he had never had a personal visitation from the Savior or seen any type of vision of the Savior. And I feel like his comments here and the way I feel like he came off a lot softer and more humble, weirdly, because a lot of the stuff he's saying is super arrogant, but at least his tone seemed a lot more humble than I've ever seen him, frankly. There is part of me who thinks that he expected when Nelson died that he would receive that type of visitation, did not receive it. And when he is talking about you continue to serve and wait on the Lord's timing, I think he is reassuring himself. That is my take on this part of his talk. I think he is, it's like we talked about RFM with the way the story of the road to Emmaus is used, where we tell people that it's much more powerful to have some spiritual experience than it is to have any type of literal, actual experience so that you know these things in the way that we would typically say that we know something. That's my take on this part of his talk, is that he is reassuring himself and telling himself that he just continues to serve and wait on the Lord's timing, and he is willing to go to his grave not having the experience he has probably looked for his entire life.
Just like he was willing to go to the grave with blacks not having the priesthood and that revelation not being received. That's really an interesting point that you make. Boy, if he really thought that he was going to see Jesus when he became president, is it possible that Russell Nelson was just sort of having him on for 10 years? What do you think, John Dallin?
I mean, I guess we're all taught that the apostles are all special witnesses of Christ and prophets, seers, and revelators. So it's possible what you're saying is right, Colby. It's a fun thing to think about. It's also possible that if he would have been expecting some sort of visitation from God or Jesus, he would have been expecting that back in the early 80s when he was called as an apostle, and he's quite used to not talking directly to God and Jesus by now. But I do think that if it's true that they, if you're right, Colby, then I'm kind of sad for him, and if I'm right, then I think you have to question the ethics of allowing members, millions of members, to believe that you're a special witness of Christ and talk to God and Jesus when you don't. I think there are ethical problems with that.
What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, I think it is very sad to be that elderly and get that non-witness and go, oh, crap. What else might not be real? But no, I think they're talking about the celestial hamster wheel. We all know what that is, keeping everybody on that. I agree with you. It's temple serviced mostly. I think all of us have examples. My own parents were examples of that. 30 years, working in the temple, forsaking, seeing grandkids and kids for doing that, but feeling that they are doing work for their family because of that. And I think we all saw during COVID what happened when you allow people to get off the hamster wheel. How many people say this? I just suddenly felt different. I could think for the first time. My head was clear. I saw that just spending time with my family made me happy, not fighting on Sunday to get everybody to church. How many people said that? It was not, I don't believe, that maybe that was a catalyst to let you look into some of the doctrine, but it was really just taking a moment, like Nemo said, slow down, breathe, and come up for air, kind of. And I think they know that that's dangerous. And I sometimes wonder, we all know that the parameters for wards and stakes have changed. They're so concentrated and reduced. And I follow faithful social media a lot. And I see this comment all the time from desperate people. Between my husband and I, we have 4 major callings. I can't think. I can't, I'm trying to take care of the kids. Is anyone else feeling this? They are just strapped and they don't know what to do. And sometimes I think that's by design, because you can't walk away when you're doing that until you maybe just completely break. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think you've got to stop people from taking that moment, that pause, that time out to just realize, what do I really think? I mean, that was my story. I was always sort of a never believer, but I still was willing to be on the hamster wheel forever, for over 5 decades. And then during COVID, I just kind of sat there in my backyard sipping tea in a swimsuit going, this is really nice. And when they tried to get me to come back, I'm like, you know what? I value this way more than that, and I'm not. So that really is kind of my story, just inadvertently getting off that hamster wheel. Nothing to do with belief, just the simple routine of you just do it because you do it. So that's my thought.
Your thoughts, Randy?
Well, when President Oaks is talking about be patient, the way that translated to me is a message of being desperate and insecure. It's kind of an admission that you're going to have to wait till the 12th of never to get your answers, because we've had plenty of time, plenty of smart people working on these apologetics, and they're just not working. And it kind of reminds me of, when you go into court, as Colby and RFM know, the judge doesn't say, or RFM doesn't argue for his client's innocence, saying, based upon the evidence we're going to have, I promise it's going to have, you need to acquit this person and let them go, because I guarantee in 2 or 3 years, we'll have the technology, we'll have the answers. Just be patient, Your Honor, and let him go. You decide cases based upon the evidence in hand. And so kind of reflecting back on my life, I think there's a lot of regrets coming out of Mormonism. And one for me personally is I grew up in Orange County very close to Los Angeles. And I read the LA Times every morning. And I read these reports about the racial issues going on in Alabama and Mississippi, and JFK was my hero. And I just was even as a kid, the whole blacks and the priesthood thing was so revolting to me. And, people were, be patient. There had already been 150 years gone by where this policy was in place. And even at my young age, looking back, I wish I had had the courage and the character and the fortitude to say, this religion, despite the fact that my ancestors go back to Nauvoo and my parents are really in it to win it, is not for me. I really wish that the answers were right there in front of us. It wasn't a matter of being patient. And, I don't know why. I guess there were all the pressures to stay in the church. And I regret that affected me as well. But be patient. That's kind of a white flag as I interpret it.
It does raise the question of be patient for what?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we're to the final round of closing statements. John Dallin, you'd had suggested that maybe you have something ready for that. So let's start with you, and then we'll go to everybody else.
I just wanted to say that I think one of the most beautiful things that Mormon podcasts has done is to help create community. And so I just want to make sure the audience is aware of something really exciting that's happening. In just a few weeks in St. George, Utah, on February 20th through 22nd, there's going to be a Thrive conference. It's not a money-making endeavor. It loses money every year. Nobody makes a profit off of this conference. But just check out who's going to be there. Dr. Julie Hanks, Haley Rawl of Girls Camp, Nathan Hinckley, Lauren Matthias of Hidden True Crime, Dr. Greg Prince, Rebecca Biblioteca and Landon Brophy, Bill Reel and Radio Free Mormon. And that's not all. They'll have Sam Young from Protect LDS Children, Jeremy Runnels of the CES Letter, Randy Bell, Anthony Miller, Natasha Helfer, Megan Connor, Nancy Ross. And it's only $45 for an entire weekend. And we don't do Thrive because we're trying to create a new set of apostles. And I shouldn't say we. I'm not on the Thrive board. I don't even decide who speaks. But the people who run Thrive are doing Thrive for one reason. It's to help you find friends and community in your journey in either unorthodox or post-Mormonism. So come to Thrive in St. George. There's only 55 tickets left. There's going to be 700 sold out seats, and there's only 55 left. So I'd love to see you all there. And it'll be a great time. And RFM, that's all you need to know is RFM, and that should be enough.
I want to go to this thing. It sounds fun.
And Colby will be there with Cam as well.
Colby's coming.
So
the Randall Brigade.
Only Nemo.
I will.
Nemo's the only slacker. Nemo, what's going on?
Nemo, you're not going to be there?
He's
No, I
coming
won't.
later.
I'm coming later.
You only
So I
fly
will
over
be
here for city council meetings.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I'll be in Utah around Easter time, which is exciting. Which is why I've stayed up late into the night, because this is just practice for jet lag right here.
You're going to be over here for
Going
Easter?
strong.
I understand that General Conference is going to be around Easter time.
Oh well, now wouldn't you believe it? Those
You're not
two
going to
things
do
may be
anything
related.
radical,
dream
are
of it.
you?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Let me just tell people, you go to thrivebeyondreligion.com to get your tickets. There's only 55 left. We've put it in the comments. Please come and see everyone. It'll be a fun time.
I was there last year. It was really cool. It was really good fun. So I can confirm.
Very
from
good. So
personal
thank you for
experience.
that. Did you want to say anything else as part of your closing statement, John?
Yeah, I just want to say that I wish that the Mormon Church would allow its apostles to retire with dignity. I'm sad that Elder Oaks in his 90s has to spend the rest of his years running a church that's hemorrhaging members. Although I guess he's choosing it, but I think what would be much more humane and much more beneficial to the broader membership would be just to let these men retire at age 70, have a forced emeritus sort of thing that they do for the Quorum of the 70, and let younger people take the helm and run this church. So I wish Elder Oaks well. I hope he does good. I hope he steers the church in a better direction. But demonizing podcasts is just going to make them more popular. Telling members to stay away from non-believers is unethical and divides families. And I hope he'll change and just be more inclusive and loving, take more accountability, apologize for the mistakes he and others have made, and be more Christ-like. That's my hope for Dallin H. Oaks and for the church.
Very good. Rebecca.
Yeah, I would also just like to give a plug for Thrive. And I would like to say, if you have friends or people that are feeling a little lost or confused or, mixed faith, bring them. This is a great place to be. My best friend from high school and her bishop husband just recently stepped away, and they're like, what do we do now? I'm like, I have the place to go. And, to make connections, to make friends, to just get a lot of information, it is the place to be. So definitely Thrive. I will say, right before we jumped on this, we were all made aware of the announcement of the new apostle. And it's Clark W. Griswold, Clark G. Gilbert. And when I think of that calling of this person, and I think of the talk that President Oaks just gave as his first, apostolic or presidential address, I almost see dark days for the future as far as information and just really tightening the screws on people. This whole talk was all about almost censoring information, not seeking information, except for in this silo. I keep using that word, but it's the best description that I have. And, just staying very narrow in your view. If you don't remember who Clark Gilbert was, he's the one that really twisted the screws on the BYU faculty and staff and said, you better be teaching gospel principles first and then your discipline. So, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the idea. He was trying to create this new environment, not of scholarship or learning, but of it's the gospel or the highway. So I do worry about that with these two things happening together, the choice of Elder Gilbert and just the way this talk, science and information and, don't go looking there. Don't go turning that rock, over. So I hope I'm wrong, but also the fact that Elder Gilbert is very young. He's 55. I think even if we hope Elder Uchtdorf gets in there and can make some changes, those will be undone by the youngins, Elder Bednar, and now Elder Gilbert, into long after we've probably all passed away. So I hope I'm wrong, but that choice kind of just threw me for a loop. And I also owe money to RFM and Bill because I bet on somebody else. Yes, we bet on apostles.
Yes.
So
And it's
I don't know.
accruing interest, by the way, as of today, Rebecca.
No, it can't earn interest. All right, I'll wire you some money right away. But it was only $50 each, so I really was hoping it would be Elder Dubé. I really thought maybe it was a new day, and I don't see that it is. So we'll see. We'll keep watching. But right now, I feel a little melancholy about the whole thing.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that with us, Randy.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you, RFM, for putting this all together. I don't know about everyone else, but I've really thoroughly enjoyed what have been very articulate and well-crafted, well-reasoned ideas and suggestions from you podcasters. My only regret is I got John to get off the 10,000 dime to the hundreds of thousands dime, but didn't quite get the acknowledgement that there's been millions of people, influenced by your collective wonderful podcasting work. So maybe next time, John, I'll get you to do that.
I think it's billions. I think it's bigger than that. I think billions of Mormons have left the church because of us.
Okay. Well,
Randy, if we're counting never Mormons, I'd say millions for sure.
Okay. Well, that's millions that could have joined that didn't. So anyway, I'll stand by my millions. I'm also going to stand by my suggestion that Sandra Tanner is the real prophet, that President Oaks is the best thing to happen to the LDS Church, because he's just kept the torch being passed to more content to just sit there and scratch our heads and say, what the heck are you talking about? The reality is that with the Mormon Church, the facts just don't add up. They just don't. And there's been plenty of time, and those are the answers. And the problem, the anecdote is simple: apologize, but they're very stubborn. They will never come clean and apologize. And the Catholic Church did it with Pope John Paul II in the Second Vatican, or whatever it was called. They apologized, and most people, myself included, can accept apologies and move on. But as long as they maintain that and grip that death grip on maintaining the status quo and not apologizing, they're going to be. We're just going to have plenty of content for future podcasts. The last thing I want to say, I'm reluctant to even say this but I'm the CEO of Landmark Research, and to tell me to don't do research, you're telling the wrong person. I would suggest to everybody, I start every podcast I do with, don't believe a word I say, research what I say. I tell that to my kids. Don't believe a word I say, research what I say. Learn how to dig in, get both sides of the story, and do your research. And I suggest that to everybody listening. Please do your research, fact check everything. I was out to dinner with Bill Reel once. I said something and he's on his phone. I thought it was on Facebook, and I thought I was being born here. He was fact checking me on ChatGPT to check what I was saying. And I admired him for doing it. Turned out I happened to be right on that one. But fact check, because we all make mistakes. Thanks again, RFM, for putting this together.
Thank you, Randy. Thinking about that stake precedent story that President Oaks, only an elder, told, it would be funny if it's not true, because it doesn't look like it's true. And the reason it's funny is because it's in the context of a talk where he is actually telling people not to listen, not to be led astray by false information. And if he's telling a bogus story in the middle of that, that's kind of funny. Nemo, your closing thoughts.
Well, in the spirit of fact checking, I will go back to that scripture I shared and said that it was King Benjamin, and I was shouted down and told, no, it's Alma the Younger. No, it was definitely King Benjamin. It's Mosiah 4. Anyway, so we'll move on from that.
What are we talking about here?
Earlier, I said a scripture was King Benjamin, and I believe you and Colby said it was Alma the Younger.
I was just talking about his patriarchal blessing.
It's clear.
Isn't that what you were talking about, Colby?
Good thing you're not coming to Thrive, Nemo. We'd make you pay.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's okay. We're all learning. We're all works in progress, as the prophet just told us.
Indeed. And it is 3:30 a.m., so I shall keep this brief. I think ultimately it was a very revealing talk. I think it told us a lot about where Dallin H head is at and where he is sort of envisaging the church going. I think it shows a lot of what his worries are and his concerns, both personally and for the church. You don't have to have a tinfoil hat to see what this talk says about how he views the state of the church at the moment. So I think that shows, as John has said, the efficacy of what we do in being part of the conversation. A lot of times people will tend to think, oh, what we do is kind of irrelevant and it doesn't make a difference. But clearly it's on the radar of the leaders of the church to the point where they're talking about it. So this is clearly still a conversation. It's not just us shouting into the ether. And I think we should acknowledge that.
Very good. Thank you, Nemo. And Colby, you get the final word on this show before we close it out.
Thank you. My thought is I agree with Nemo that Oaks is not one to... So everything in this talk we've heard before, I think. But Oaks is always such an interesting speaker to me because of the way his brain works. He's very transparent in the way he's structured his points and how he puts those pieces together. So that was very revealing to me. I thought it was very revealing that even though we had, was it Cook in the last general conference that basically claimed the church has never been in a stronger state? And
sounds like Cook.
Yeah, it sounds like Quentin L. Cook.
He cooks the books.
It's good one. Allegedly. It's interesting to me that Oaks's talk does not suggest that there's any shred of truth to that, because he talks about how many people have left. He talks about not listening to podcasters, not associating with those who don't believe. Those are not the markers of a church that is projecting confidence. That is the marker of a church that is retreating desperately and trying to circle the wagons. And I thought that part of his talk was very revealing. At the close of his talk, an additional data point for my theory that he was speaking to himself with that last clip, he again bears his testimony as a special witness of the name of Jesus Christ. And so that is very interesting to me. I do think it's interesting that Oaks seemed so much softer and humbler than I've seen him before, even while he's spouting, I would say, quite a bit of nonsense about the scientific method and its comparison to religious truth. And I think that just kind of foreshadows where Mormonism is going to go. We're going to continue to see like podcasts like the one that we've talked about before, RFM, where apologists are saying, don't listen to the experts, stop listening to intellectuals. Why would you listen to smart people? I think that's very revealing. I think the last thing I'll say is for people who think all that ex-Mormon podcasters do is snipe at every single little thing the church does. On Saturday, Valentine's Day, John will be hosting a panel with some folks discussing things they like about the church and things they appreciated about their time inside of Mormonism. And that will be interesting to compare and contrast with our discussion tonight. As we kind of look at this talk as the future of Mormonism, it'll be interesting to take a look back. Mine is definitely my friendship with Captain Moroni. Okay.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Colby was correct.
You.
It was.
I'm sorry, what, Nemo?
Colby was correct. It's Quentin L. Cook.
Yes. And that's how you remember, because he's the guy who cooks the books.
How did you find that answer, Nemo? Was it, I don't know, say through research?
I may have researched it. You might be right.
The state of the church is strong.
Some research may have been done.
Do you have a final statement, RFM? All of us made a final statement.
I've
You've been
kind of
moderating and kind of talking, but do you have a final statement to see us out?
No, but thank you for asking. I've been making my comments all along the way. But my final statement is to thank each and every one of you for coming out here on very short notice. Colby, thank you for being here. Nemo, you are peaches, you're tops, you're the best. It is early morning. The sun is coming up over the horizon. Randall Bell, thank you for being here. John Dallin, you are a mensch. You're a legend. Thank you for being here on this show. Rebecca, you're the best thing going in post-Mormonism. Love your show, Mormonish, and everything that you bring to the Mormon newscast every Monday evening. Everybody, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching. Until next time, this is Radio Free Mormon, signing off the air.